Good evening. On behalf of the Standards Committee, I would like to thank you for attending our presentation this evening. We are here to present you the draft mandatory training requirements for the Delaware Fire Service. To begin with, it is important that we review why we are here this evening to present you with these recommended mandatory training requirements. The Joint Sunset Committee is a committee of the Delaware Legislature which conducts evaluation and review of all state agencies on a periodic basis. During 2009, the Joint Sunset Committee reviewed operations of the State Fire Prevention Commission, the Delaware State Fire School, and the Delaware State Fire Marshal's Office. At the conclusion of their review, the Joint Sunset Committee issued a directive to the State Fire Prevention Commission, the contents of which you can read on the slide in front of you. As a result of the directive of the Joint Sunset Committee, then Commission Chairman Marvin Sharp, along with DVFA President Warren Jones, worked together with the various chiefs and county firefighters associations, and a committee was formed that consisted of 3 fire commissioners and a representative of each county firefighters association and each county fire chiefs association. The committee began work on drafting the Delaware training standards as directed by the Joint Sunset Committee. The draft being described this evening is the final of 5 drafts. The Commission has been keeping the Joint Sunset Committee informed of its progress. Another directive of the Joint Sunset Committee was that the Commission create a self-inspection checklist and require at least annual self-inspections and adopt regulations that enable the same authoritative language to compel the fire companies to comply. The Commission referred this directive to the Standards Committee for their review and recommendations. The recommendations of the committee will be presented this evening. It is important to note that the directives of the Joint Sunset Review Committee instructed the State Fire Prevention Commission to begin the process of developing these standards. Along with this directive, the Joint Sunset Review Committee instructed the State Fire Prevention Commission to make recommendations for changes to Title 16 for the Commission to have the authority to develop and enforce the standards. The Commission is in the process of reviewing Title 16 and developing language to be presented to the state legislature that will meet the directives of the Joint Sunset Review Committee. Once the legislation is adopted by the legislature, then the Commission will proceed with the adoption of Delaware Firefighter training standards as a regulation. The process for the regulation will include public hearings and comments prior to adoption. In other words, any legislation introduced for passage by the state legislature will be legislation intended to give the State Fire Prevention Commission the authority to set training standard regulations and to enforce training standard regulations. If and when such legislation is passed, then the Fire Prevention Commission will begin the process of adopting the regulations being presented to you this evening. Newcastle County Firefighters Association President Lynn Truitt appointed Claymont Fire Chief Mark Harris to represent the Newcastle County Firefighters Association, and Newcastle County Fire Chiefs Association President Dave Wilson appointed Ellesmere Fire Chief Dennis Godek to represent the Newcastle County Fire Chiefs Association. In Kent County, Gary Buffy Madden, Chief of the Marydale Volunteer Fire Company, and Rodney Whalen, past Chief of the Clayton Volunteer Fire Company, represent Kent County on the committee. In Sussex County, Lynn Rogers, Chief of the Milton Volunteer Fire Department, and Joe Morris, Chief of the Delmar Fire Department, represent the firefighters of Sussex County. The Fire Commission is represented by Commissioners Marvin Sharp, Willard Bill Betts, and Doug Murray. The Delaware Volunteer Firefighters Association is represented on the committee by Ron Marvel, past Chief of the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department. The committee felt that it is very important that all 3 of the county firefighter communities receive the same information at the same time. Therefore, this presentation is being presented to all 3 counties this evening. We will not be accepting questions or comments this evening. We believe that it is crucial that all questions from all 3 counties receive the same answer and that all committee members have the benefit of reviewing all suggestions. Therefore, we will explain later in the presentation how to submit questions and comments, which will be compiled from all 3 counties and reviewed by the entire committee. We are also requesting that you submit suggestions on service equivalents, such as life expectancy and how it should play a part in certification, that you suggest to us your ideas for an implementation timeline for the standards to go into effect. We are also requesting that you provide us with suggestions on how the Commission would enforce non-compliance with the standards once they went into effect. This evening, you have been provided with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and 2 sheets explaining the certification information. The Delaware certification requirements information provides additional information such as the number of training hours, the training location or where a class can be held, either at your station, at a county division, or in Dover, the estimated cost if a class is held at your station, the in-state equivalent training, which consists of previous classes that will be considered equivalent. For example, Fire 1 and Firemanship 1 are equivalent to basic firefighting. And an area for out-of-state equivalent training, such as NFPA, Firefighter Level 1 and/or Level 2. Your comments, recommendations, and suggestions will be accepted until April 15th, 2010. The following pages will outline the basic requirements of the mandatory standards. Delaware Firefighter 1. This standard is for the entry-level firefighter. Delaware Firefighter 1 certification would require that the firefighter complete the following Delaware State Fire School classes: basic firefighting skills, structural firefighting skills, firefighter first aid, firefighter self-survival, RIT awareness, and vehicle rescue. While firefighters may attend all of the training required for Delaware Firefighter 1 certification before the age of 18, certification will not be awarded to any individual until they reach 18 years of age. Upon certification as a Delaware Firefighter 1, firefighters will be qualified to perform structural firefighting and vehicle rescue operations. Firefighter 1 certification through the Pro Board or IFSAC would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Firefighter 1 certification. The Delaware State Fire School is reviewing, redesigning, and scheduling programs that will make training programs more available and accessible to the firefighters. An example is the offering of hazardous materials response skills and vehicle rescue programs at the divisions. Delaware Firefighter 2. Delaware Firefighter 2 certification is required for all junior officers. Junior officers are defined as captains or lieutenants. To receive the certification of Delaware Firefighter 2, the firefighter must have previously received the certification of Delaware Firefighter 1 and complete the following Delaware State Fire School courses: hazardous materials response skills, firefighting foam, sprinkler operations, emergency vehicle operators course, and crew leader. Firefighter 2 certification through the Pro Board or IFSAC would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Firefighter 2 certification. Delaware Fire Officer 1 certification. The Delaware Fire Officer 1 certification will apply to members of fire companies who will be serving as assistant chiefs. To receive the certification of Delaware Fire Officer 1, the firefighter must have previously received the certification of Delaware Firefighter 2 and Apparatus Operator certification. The firefighter must complete the Delaware State Fire School Fire Officer 1 course. Fire Officer 1 certification through the Pro Board or IFSAC would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Fire Officer 1 certification. The Delaware Fire Officer 2 requirements will apply to members of fire companies who will be serving as deputy chiefs and fire chiefs. To receive the certification of Delaware Fire Officer 2, the fire officer must have previously received the certification of Delaware Fire Officer 1 and must complete the Delaware State Fire School Fire Officer 2 course. Fire Officer 2 certification through the Pro Board or IFSAC would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Fire Officer 2 certification. Administrative officers. The administrative officer requirements will apply to the President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and any elected or appointed member of the Board who will be making financial decisions. To be certified as a Delaware Administrative Officer, the firefighter must complete the National Fire Academy Leadership 1 course, which deals with decision-making and meetings, the National Fire Academy Leadership 2 course, which deals with managing roles and ethics, and the National Fire Academy Leadership 3 course, which deals with discipline, delegating, and leadership. If the firefighter has a 2-year college degree or higher, the firefighter would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Administrative Officer certification. If the firefighter has completed the Delaware State Fire School Fire Officer 1 and 2 courses, the firefighter would be considered as meeting the requirements of Delaware Administrative Officer certification. Fire Police certification. To receive the certification of Delaware Fire Police Officer, the Fire Police Officer must complete the Delaware State Fire School Basic Fire Police course and the Emergency Vehicle Operators course. EMS Officers. The EMS Officer requirements will apply to EMS captains, lieutenants, or any other designated officer with primary responsibility for EMS. To be an EMS officer, the EMS personnel must be certified as a nationally registered EMT basic or higher, and also be certified as a field training officer. The EMS personnel must also complete the Emergency Vehicle Operators course and the Incident Command System for EMS Officers course. RIT Team Member Certification. The RIT Team Member Certification requirements will apply to firefighters who will respond as members of a RIT team. To be certified as a Delaware RIT Team member, the firefighter must be certified as a Delaware Firefighter 1 and complete the Delaware State Fire School RIT Team Member course. Apparatus Operator Certification. The Apparatus Operator Certification requirements will apply to firefighters who will drive and operate motorized fire apparatus. To be certified as a Delaware Apparatus Operator, the firefighter must be certified as a Delaware Firefighter 1 or have completed the Delaware State Fire School Introduction to Emergency Services course. The firefighter must also have completed the Delaware State Fire School Emergency Vehicle Operations course and the Delaware State Fire School Driver Operator course. And equipment inspection requirements. In addition to the mandatory training requirements specified, fire companies shall be required to have a formal maintenance and inspection program of their fire equipment. Each organization shall maintain repair and service records for their fire equipment. Apparatus shall be Department of Transportation inspected. Pumpers shall be serviced and tested annually. Aerial devices shall be inspected annually. Ladders, hose, self-contained breathing apparatus, and extinguishers shall be inspected and serviced as specified. Continuing education. It is recommended that all firefighters and fire officers receive 9 hours of continuing education yearly. The committee is requesting that you support us by viewing this presentation and the supporting documents. The committee would also like to ask for your help by making recommendations to us in the following areas. Recommendations for appropriate service equivalents to allow for previous experience in lieu of taking some or all of the training requirements. This is frequently referred to as life experience. Recommendations as to when the requirements should be implemented. Recommendations as to how the requirements should be enforced, and suggestions on improving the overall plan. The committee is requesting that you send in your comments, suggestions, and questions to the committee. Members of the committee will compile the information and respond with a document which will ensure that at all times during this process, all interested parties are receiving the same message at the same time. The committee would like any and all comments, suggestions, and recommendations as soon as possible. The cutoff date for comments, recommendations, and suggestions is April 15th, 2010. Please send your comments, recommendations, and suggestions by email to the following email address: Sherry, SHERRY, .Lambertson LAM as in Mary, BERTSON at state.de.us. Or you can fax your information to area code 302-739-4436. Thank you very much for your interest and for your participation in this process.